Hey everyone, Hungry Cat here. I hope you enjoyed the video I made about my 40-mile loop hike at Linville Gorge in North Carolina. Today I'm going to talk about the main considerations for planning a hike at Linville Gorge, as well as talk a little bit about the route that I chose. In this video we're going to cover the best time of year to hike, choosing a route, getting to and from the trail, shuttles and parking, navigation, permits and camping, food storage, and water availability. Before I get started, if you do find value in this video, please be sure to hit that like button, share it with your friends or on social media, and consider subscribing to my channel. I always appreciate your support, and it really helps me to share this information with more people. Either way, drop me a comment and let me know what you think about the video. I'm not going to cover gear for the hike in this video, but I did leave a link in the video description to my gear list if you're interested, as well as links to all of the resources that I'll mention here, so definitely be sure and check that out. I also want to caveat that I'm by no means an expert on Linville Gorge. I'm just going to share what I learned in planning my own hike in the hopes that it will help you in planning yours. Okay, with that said, let's dive right in. The best time of year to hike. The best time of year to hike is never an easy answer because there's so much personal preference involved. In the fall, you'll get expansive views with changing foliage colors, and in the spring, you'll get the wildflowers. I personally would probably choose mid to late May and late October through November as my ideal windows for this hike. That said, the gorge offers spectacular scenery year-round, weather permitting. If you're going in the winter, snow and cold temperatures can be a factor, so just make sure you're prepared for the conditions you'll face. Check to see if your route has any water crossings. The loop I did had a long river ford at the southern end of the gorge. I definitely wouldn't want to do that in the winter or immediately after heavy rains. Hiking in the gorge would be great in the summer, but you'll have to be mindful of water sources if you're hiking on the eastern ridge in the summer heat. Water sources are farther apart on the eastern ridge, and some of them may be seasonal. Aside from picking the season, if you have the ability to hike on weekdays, you'll be able to avoid both crowds and permits. The gorge is a popular place to hike, so the weekends see more traffic than the weekdays for sure. Permits are also required if you plan to camp from May through October on Friday and Saturday nights and holidays. You can avoid the need for a permit by planning your trip during the week, which also helps to spread the burden of use on the gorge itself. Choosing a route. There are a lot of different trails and routes you can take through Linville Gorge. You'll see some signage during your hike, but it's important to have a map as there are many side trails and offshoots, and not everything is clearly marked. When choosing a route, the first thing you need to know is that the eastern side of the gorge on Jonas Ridge is where you'll get the best long-distance views. The hiking at the southern end of the gorge near Wolf Pit Trailhead and Short Off Mountain is a little easier than the hiking near Table Rock and some of the other major rock formations like the Chimneys. For me, the eastern rim of the gorge was the highlight of the trip. I did equally enjoy hiking in the gorge itself along the Linville River though. The hiking inside the gorge was strenuous and very rocky, and the temperatures in general were a little bit cooler than up on the rim. The trails inside the gorge don't just run flat alongside the river. Sometimes you'll be close to the river, and other times you're going to be traveling up and down over very rocky terrain high above it. I wanted to see as much of the gorge as I could, so I decided to hike a 40-mile loop that covered the length of the gorge itself. I could have easily spent a few more days along this route, just following side trails, climbing up some of the rock features, and enjoying the views. I parked at Wolf Pit Trailhead, which is free parking, and went counterclockwise around the gorge. I headed first up Short Off Mountain, and then along the ridge past the rock formations known as the Chimneys, and then Table Rock. A lot of people take Spence Ridge for a shorter loop, but I continued north to Hawksbill. I adjusted my route and walked part of this section on a dirt road because the trail going up the ledge to Hawksbill was in pretty bad shape. From there I continued to Brushy Ridge and cut north and west on dotted line trails over Gulf Contour to the Linville Falls Visitor Center. After that I turned back south inside the gorge along the Linville River until crossing back over the river on the southern end via the Mountains to Sea Trail, and then back to the Wolf Pit Trailhead parking lot. If you follow the loop that I did, you'll have to ford the Linville River at the southern end of the gorge to get back to the Wolf Pit Trailhead. The river ford was about shin to knee deep on me, and the water current was very mellow. That said, river levels can rise suddenly, so just be cognizant of the weather and recent rains. As far as I know, fording the river is the only way to get back to Wolf Pit Trailhead, other than heading back out to the road and hitching a ride. If I were to do this loop again, I would definitely bring a bright orange hat or something bright orange for hunting season. I ran into some bear hunters on the dotted line social trails in the northeast part of the wilderness. I saw their trucks and dogs, and I could hear the dogs in the wilderness, so I knew I needed to make a lot of noise, but still, I should have researched in advance and known this and worn something bright orange, and at the time, I really wished I had bright orange on my clothing. But I made a lot of noise and everything ended up being fine. So if you go during hunting season, just be aware that you probably will want to bring something bright orange so that you can hike in greater safety and comfort. Access and shuttles. The Linville Gorge Visitor Center sits on the north end of Linville Gorge and is roughly 30 miles southwest of Boone, North Carolina, the small town home of Appalachian State University. Asheville, North Carolina is the closest city with an airport. It's about 60 miles away, or an hour and 20-minute drive. Charlotte, North Carolina has a major airport and is about 2 hours away by car, or 102 miles. The best way to get to the gorge trails is to drive. If you're flying into Asheville or Charlotte, it's easiest to rent a car. You could check with a shuttle provider for North Carolina area trails if you're interested in getting a ride from the airport, but there's no regular shuttle service that runs between the airports and the gorge at this time that I'm aware of. Once you're in the gorge, there are many different access points and routes, which you can see on the Avenza map of the gorge. There are a lot of different places to park depending on the route you're taking, and you can see these parking lots on the Avenza map. If you're hiking a loop or an out and back route, you really just need to decide where you're going to start and end. Parking in the gorge is free in the areas where public parking is allowed. Some of the popular parking spots have overflow parking. Just make sure you don't park in areas marked as private property, as these parking lots can get really full during popular times and on the weekends. I parked at Wolf Pit Trailhead for my hike and left my car there for a few days. There aren't a lot of options currently if you wish to find a shuttle and do a point-to-point hike in the gorge, leaving your car at one end and having a shuttle driver take you to the other. I recommend checking with Traveling Light Shuttle and Resupply, and as a fallback, check with the Nantahala Outdoor Center for a current list of trail angels and shuttle providers in the area. You can also check the Linville Gorge Facebook group and perhaps find assistance with a ride there. I think most people who visit the gorge hike out and back, do a loop, or go with a group and bring 2 cars for shuttling. Navigation. You definitely will want a map inside the gorge. The network of trails can be confusing and isn't always well marked. I highly recommend using the Avenza map app. The app is free, and you can download a free map of Linville Gorge as well. This map is the best one I've found for navigating the gorge. The other benefit of using the Avenza app and map is that it uses GPS to show you where you are on the map once you're in the gorge. You can use it in airplane mode so it won't drain your battery down, and it only uses battery for GPS while the app is open. When you use the Avenza map, you'll see blue water droplets to indicate water sources. This is especially helpful on the eastern rim called Jonas Ridge, where water is more scarce. I didn't check all of the water sources on my hike, but I tend to be conservative with water on ridgelines, and I assume that many of the sources are only seasonally available. I recommend taking this into consideration as you plan your trip. You'll see both solid line trails and dotted line trails on the Avenza map. I spoke with a ranger while hiking in the gorge, and he said the dotted line trails are not actually official National Service trails. The dotted line trails are what are called social trails that have evolved over time from use by locals, hikers, hunters, volunteers, etc. It's therefore safe to assume that the dotted line trails might be a bit more overgrown and perhaps even more rugged than some of the solid line trails. Now, I still enjoyed these trails and didn't have any major issues, with one exception being the dotted line trail up to Hawksbill along the ridge. I ended up avoiding this particular dotted line route because I heard from some folks there that the bushwhacking on it was pretty bad. So instead, I just walked a dirt road that I could see on my Avenza map and took a slightly different route up to Hawksbill. Having the Avenza map app made it really easy for me to adjust my route on the fly. You can find free printable maps of the gorge trails online as well, which I've linked to in the video description along with a link to the Avenza maps. Permits and camping. You don't need a permit just to hike for the day in Linville Gorge, but you do need a permit if you plan to camp on weekends or holidays from May 1st through October 31st. The National Forest Service specifically defines weekends as camping on Friday or Saturday nights, not Sunday night. Permits are free, but they limit the number to 50 per day. 35 of these are obtainable in advance, and 15 per day are reserved for walk-ins. Advance permits can be obtained by telephone as early as the first of the month prior to the month you want to visit the gorge. For example, if you want a permit for June, you can reserve it as early as May 1st. To get a walk-in permit, you have to go to the Linville Gorge Information Cabin on the west side of the gorge. These walk-in permits become available each Friday during permit season at 10 a.m. There's a link for more information and numbers to call for permits in the video description. There are no shelters in Linville Gorge. Camping is dispersed, first come, first served, and there are quite a few designated campsites along the way. The Avenza app does a pretty good job of marking these campsites. There are a lot of hikers in the gorge, so it's generally easier to find open campsites on the weekdays than on weekends, especially near trailheads in popular areas like Table Rock. While camping on the eastern rim for sunset and sunrise will be a highlight for many, there are some really beautiful campsites beside the river inside the gorge as well. Food storage. There's really no way to resupply in the gorge unless you have people assisting you by showing up with food or caching it for you somehow. So you'll need to plan to bring all the food you'll need for your trip. The gorge is home to a variety of wildlife like bears, mice, raccoons, and other animals, so proper food storage is important. You'll want to be able to properly hang your food, or otherwise consider using an sack or a bear canister. I used a hermetically sealed sack bag to contain food odors as well as a hangable bear bag. You can see these items in my gear list link in the video description. Destinations like Linville Gorge that are heavily visited also tend to be the places where you need to be the most careful with food storage. Carelessness can train animals that people equal the potential for a quick score of food, so I'm always extra cautious in these types of places. Water availability. Water is readily available inside the gorge on the trails that run along the western side of the Linville River. Water is not as readily available on the eastern rim, so you'll need to take note of the water sources on the Avenza map in those locations and be conservative. I didn't actually find water at every water source, but there was enough water along the way that, with some conservatism, I never ran short. You will of course need to filter or treat the water that you get on trail or from the Linville River. I used a Sawyer Squeeze water filter, which is what I frequently use for my hikes, and I dropped a link in the video description in case you're interested in checking that out. And that wraps up my brief overview of planning a hike at Linville Gorge. This truly is a unique destination and one of the highlights of the Pisgah National Forest. If you have a few days, definitely go check it out and drop me a comment to let me know how your trip was. If you found any value in this video, please do hit that like button, consider subscribing to my channel, and if you haven't already, share this video with a friend or on your social media. Thanks for your support, thanks as always for watching, and I will see you in the next video.